start this off a little bit differently. I thought I was going to be able to write on the board, but we have the screen now, so we're just going to have to remember this. So I want to ask you guys a question. I want you to raise your hand, 5 people, and answer me. What would you see as being your #1 asset right now? So it could be like your phone, something in your purse, or whatever it may be. So 5 people.
A laptop.
Laptop. Okay. Anybody?
My writing.
Writing. Okay, good. A skill. Who else? Arthur.
Right, talking.
His voice. Okay. All right. 2 more. Yeah. Speaking 7 languages. And then 1 more. Your #1 asset. Anybody?
Being social.
Being social. Okay. Good. So, an asset. Let's begin by defining it very simply as being a valuable thing, person, or quality. Right? So when you think about assets, you could kind of subdivide them into physical as well as financial assets. So on the physical side, we have our homes, our cars, our jewelry, so like our engagement rings, collectibles, things that may be valuable to us but not to other people, as well as electronics, which you can't really live without today. And then we also have the financial side. So like our savings, our checking accounts, stocks and bonds, any investments we have, as well as life insurance, something like that, alongside skills and all the other things that we listed. Now the reason I wanted to ask you guys that question when I started was because 7 years ago, I was at the Lawrenceville School in Pennsylvania, and the dean there was giving us kind of a motivational speech for starting high school, and he asked us the question, what's your #1 asset? So everyone raised your hand, and they're like, oh, money. I'm like, oh yeah, money's good. That's a good answer. He's like, okay, what else? Someone said, our skills. I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty good answer too. I didn't really think about that. Someone said, oh, our homes. And they kept going, right? And then we finished answering, it's like, nobody else? And he kind of did one of these. And then he told us, your #1 asset is your time, right? And I was kind of like, wow, that's pretty cool. Because I didn't really think about it in that aspect, but you know, it makes a lot of sense. Again, this doesn't really fall under the physical or financial side, like some of the things we said before didn't fall under one of these. But him telling us, you know, time is your #1 asset kind of put a new perspective on what I have to do with my time, right? So time, why is it important? Franklin and Gilbert, they're pioneers from the early 1900s. They pioneered the area of time and motion studies, and they had a study in workplace psychology in efficiently managing the workplace. And through one of the studies, I read through it for one of my management courses, and they made certain points about time. Those points being that time is intangible, that time is money, that unnecessary motion is time lost forever. So right now, I kind of want to go through each of these points and kind of talk about it. So, intangible. Time is abstract. We can't hold it, we can't see it, and we can't really control it, right? And we kind of have to get to the point where we ask ourselves, do we really understand it? So I don't know about you guys, but when I sit down and I think about the concept of forever or eternity, I can't really grasp my mind around. I'm like, oh yeah, you keep going and you die. I'm like, wait, no, you don't die. No, forever, right? So a lot of the time we kind of use these terms of these concepts of time by saying like, you know, best friends forever, I'll love you forever, or I'll never do that, without really kind of grasping the concept of what forever means, right? So time is intangible. Time is money, you know, depending where you're from, it could be the dough, the good, the moolah, right? And saying that time is money kind of takes the idea of time being intangible and making it almost measurable. So think about it. We work for a certain amount of dollars per hour, right? We pay to sit in a class like this, English 340, we pay per credit hour, right? And then when we get a service like a massage or something else, a lot of time we pay, you know, per hour that we're in there. So thinking about time being money from the study is kind of putting a measurable aspect to time. So now I want to play a quick video. This is going to be by Robert Kaplan. He is a management professor at Harvard Business School. If he wants to play. Whoop. You probably need time or volume.
Then, as a leader, the most valuable asset you have, yes, there's money, yes, there's plant and equipment, yes, there's a lot of customers, there's many other valuable assets, but the most valuable, in my opinion, is your time. It's wasting every moment, and you can't get it back, okay? It's more valuable than money, in my experience, and I'll come back to that. And so what would I say? Once you've decided what your 3 or 4 or 5 top priorities are, I would argue you need to spend 70% of your time. You should have a goal of spending at least 70% of your time matching those 3 or 4 or 5 top priorities. And in fact, for most of you, If I ask most of you, how do you spend your time? How do you spend it in the last 2 weeks? If you ask me, I would have to answer, I haven't a clue. You,
Okay, so this was a
Oh,
quick
that's really good.
excerpt of a video from this series of simple strategies to be an effective leader. So if you heard what he said in the video, he said that we should be spending 70% of our time on our top priorities. Now again, this is from more of a business perspective, again, from a management lecture. He's saying we should be spending 70% of our time on our top priorities. And then he went to challenge the crowd. He said for the next few days, write down what you spend your time doing, right? But before you do that, kind of write down your priorities and categorize them as being top priorities, so like number 1, secondary priorities, and trinary, or third priorities, right? And then see how much time you spend on each. And he said you're going to be surprised how much time you spend, on your third tier priorities versus your first tier priorities, where that's where you should be spending 70% of your time. Again, that's in a business setting, but you kind of get the idea. So kind of going off that video, we get into the idea of unnecessary motion, right? So like he said, time is always wasting, and we can't get it back. So he kind of gave us an idea from an entrepreneurial perspective. If you say your customers are your number 1 assets, and let's say your quality of your product, but you're not spending 70% of your time on those priorities, well then you're doing something wrong, right? You're wasting time. You're causing unnecessary motion and not putting your top priorities first. Now we can look at this in many aspects of life. So let's say recreation, right? Your social life. It depends who you ask. Is spending 8 hours with your friends unnecessary motion? Are you wasting time? Like, should you be only hanging out for 2 hours and doing something else? Well, that depends who you ask. What about health? How much you sleep, right? We all have those friends that only sleep 4 hours a night because they say there's no time to sleep. And then we have those friends that may sleep 10 to 12 hours a night, right? What's better? Is it better to sleep more, have a healthier lifestyle, or sleep less to get more work done? It really depends who you ask in terms of unnecessary motion. And then there's a lot of other areas that we can talk about that. So now the reason why we're talking about unnecessary motion is because we can't control time. So we can't stop it, we can't go back in time, and we can't control time. If any of you guys can do that, help a brother out, okay? However, we really do have an abundance of time when we think about it. So let's think about it. How much time do we actually have? Now, these numbers here I kind of based off of my timeline, so I'm going to be 21 in a month. So since I was born, or since we were born, there have been 180,720 hours in our lifetime, right? Now let's cut this down a little bit. Let's look at how much time has passed since our freshman year of high school. So 7 years, right? There's been 57,600 hours. Now, of course, that's all the time, right? So now let's cut out 8 hours a day for sleep. Most of us probably don't even get that much time, right? So if we cut out a third of our day for sleep, we've had 38,400 hours since our freshman year of high school. And now let's go again and cut out another 8 hours a day, including weekends and the summer, which most of us aren't in school on the weekends and the summer, for school, and we're left with 19,200 hours of no responsibility, quote unquote. I know some of us have jobs, some of us have to take care of family, but that's time we don't spend sleeping and time we don't spend in school, and then some, because we're counting school hours for the summer and the weekends. So 19,200 hours, what could we have done with that in the past 7 years? We could have sat through 12,800 English 40 classes. So imagine how good at public speaking we'd be then, right? We could have gone to 6,400 baseball games. Go Mets, 10-game winning streak.
10-game winning streak.
Exactly. And we could have done anything else, right? That's 800 24-hour days we could have spent doing anything. Imagine what kind of skills you could have now if you spend that much time, 24-hour days for 800 days in a row, perfecting something or many things. So we come to the question of, what do we do with all this time, right? And you have to answer for yourself, is that good or is that bad? And depending on different cultures, you're gonna have different views, right? So like on one end of the spectrum, you're gonna have like, oh, aloha, the ways, man, kind of thing, like, oh, just lay back, relax, enjoy life, oh, you work too hard, you gotta have some pina colada, right? On the other end of the spectrum, we have the people who are like, oh, what are you doing, watching TV, you gotta go to work, you gotta do this, right? Very structured, very, you gotta spend all your time efficiently. Most of us hopefully fall somewhere in between there. But again, you can see how different cultures are gonna have different views. So now I'm presenting you guys the idea of time being our number 1 asset. But I'm also presenting it in the form of being a double-edged sword, right? So it's very important, but at the same time it's intangible, it's uncontrollable, and it's stressful. So like, what the heck, like, how am I supposed to deal with this? Well, that's where time management comes in. You can think of time management as being the institution of the asset that is time. So to counterbalance time, time being intangible, we can write it down. We can get a planner, we can write down what we want to do, and then we sort of have it, in a physical aspect in our hands, we can see what we want to do. time is uncontrollable, well, we can control what we write down. We can control our schedule and what we want to do. And time is stressful. Well, there we have allocation. That kind of ties into being controllable. We can allocate what we do and how much we do it for, and when we do it, in order to make it best fit our days and to get everything done. Now, the reason why time management is so important is because that's the only power we have over time, and time is what's going to help propel us since, the past 10 years already and going forward into our career. Time management is really us like grasping life by the balls. So, thank you.